Hello, my name is Manuela Rumsey, and I'm a licensed American real estate agent in Vicenza, Italy. As part of my series, Buying a House in Italy 101, today I'm interviewing Laura. Laura is an American woman who bought a house near Vicenza and renovated it. We're going to hear her talk about her experience, what she learned from it, what she wishes she had known, and what advice she would give to others. I think you'll find it worthwhile. Here with Laura. Laura has renovated a beautiful home in Vicenza, and she has very kindly agreed to talk with me today about her experience so we can learn from it and discover new insights about renovating property in Italy. So, Laura, please say hello.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Okay. Laura, how many years have you been living in Italy now?
I moved to Italy in April of 2009, so let me do the math. What is that, 16 years?
Yeah, 16
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Probably went by in a flash.
It totally has.
It's strange how that happens, right?
It's hard for me to even say that. Yeah.
And how many years have you been living here in this particular house, this location?
In this house, we bought this house in August of 2018. So now going on 7 years, yeah, 7 years this August.
And was it in this condition when you bought it?
Not at all. It was more, the structure of the building was pretty much as we see it, but the interior was totally renovated.
Totally renovated. Okay. And before you decided on this house, had you looked around at a lot of other places?
We had looked at several. We didn't look at a lot, but we were, wanting a certain price range, a certain location, and so, we looked at some of the newer homes. This isn't particularly a really old house in comparison to some of the older Italian houses, but yeah, we did look around a bit, and then because of the size and of this house and of the property, for what the price was being listed, it really stood out to us.
So it sounds like you found something that struck you right away as a good deal.
Absolutely, yeah. And that sort of appealed to both my husband and I, and what we were looking for. And in comparison to other places that we were looking for, it seemed that we were getting a lot more for our money than what other places were offering.
Oh, okay. So it was a really good value for the money.
Yeah.
It checked all the boxes and...
Yes,
right.
that's right.
What was the property? Okay, so we went through what the property was like when you bought it. How did you feel at that time about renovating something as opposed to buying something that was move-in ready? Had you already prepared yourself, let's say mentally, emotionally, for undertaking a renovation? How did you feel about that?
Well, no, I was extremely anxious, and but because my husband and I we had built a house, and he had built a house prior to me being in his life, I wasn't totally opposed to the idea, but at the same time, given where we are in the stage in our life, I wasn't sure that I wanted to take on a major project. So yeah, there was a lot of anxiety and trepidation about taking on something that would require renovation. And one of the criteria was the renovation was really more cosmetic than structurally, and that was certainly a big plus, is that we knew structurally. Once we started looking at the property and getting more information, that structurally things were sound. It was more that we just need to do more interior and, cosmetic type of renovation.
So you weren't tearing it down and starting from scratch. You wanted to keep the bones were good, and you wanted to keep that basic structure, and
Right.
then okay.
Right.
So did you have someone like an architect or an engineer to oversee this project for you? Were you on site every day? I mean, kind of, how did that whole process go?
Yeah, that was, probably in an Italian way. It went very Italian-like in that, it was never, with a lot of certainty or structure. I was able to work with someone who did construction on the military base where I was working at the time. And while he was Italian and did not have his own Italian business as an architect or an engineer, he had experience in working for a company that was working on the base. So basically, naively, I had him look at the place, and we were talking about mainly replacing some floors, putting in a different kitchen, remodeling, painting, and putting in new fixtures and bathroom fixtures. So I felt that we didn't really need to have an architect or someone to oversee that process. And given that he came, gave me an offer, something that felt doable, he was available, he did have the experience of working with Italian in the construction business. I thought that it was, and the guidance I was receiving from the people we were buying the house from, and I believe I consulted with, we had a broker who helped us in the moving forward and getting a loan for the house. So we had sort of this, maybe not quite always professional advice. It was more the local advice of what we could do and couldn't do.
Did you, besides this person who did the work that you just mentioned on the base, did you get bids from other companies, or this seemed to be in line with what your budget and so on, and so you felt comfortable just going with him?
That's right. Part of it was, time constraints, not really knowing who to talk to in the community, not having, a good command of the language. I happened to have someone that I knew on the base who knew of the person who did the work for us, and she was kind of our liaison. And so basically, once he came and gave us some assurances that this is what he could do and this is what it would cost, we pretty much decided just to go with that.
And how long did all the work take before you could move in, or were you able to move in immediately, and then the work was performed while you were living here?
Yeah, well, so we probably, again, it was kind of in an unconventional way. The owner had an other resident that he wanted to move to, so he agreed to allow us to start work in certain parts of the house, because it is a large house and there's basically 4 floors. He agreed that we could have the workers come in and start doing some of the minor things, and so before we actually signed and had the ownership of the house, we actually had them start doing some of the renovation. So it was all basically just on good faith that things were going to go through. But we found the house and started the process in March of 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018, and then in August 2018 we owned the house, and the work was completed by about October of 2018. As you can see, we have lots of dogs.
And was that the estimated time frame that you'd been given? I mean, were you told in advance it will probably take about this much time? And
I would say yes. I would say it was pretty much the estimated time. I mean, there was, obviously weather issues and that sort of thing. Now, our kitchen remodel was done through a different company that we did, work with someone who was more of, that was their business, and so we worked with them. So the kitchen wasn't fully functional until probably till the end of September, beginning of October.
So how was it like to live with a kitchen that wasn't complete?
Well, if you've been camping or lived on a sailboat like we did, we had some tricks in our bag to, basically a microwave and a 2-burner stovetop. Yeah, hot plate, basically.
Kind of going back to college a little bit, sounds like.
And having a really good pizza place nearby made a big difference.
I bet that was key.
Yes.
So were there any surprises or unexpected developments along the way that really threw you for a loop? I mean, every project is going to have probably some curve or something happen that you weren't expecting. But also, as you went along, did you have any second thought, well, gee, now that I think about it, maybe I would like this to be this way instead of that way?
Not really. I think the biggest thing is actually now, in retrospect, as we plan our future and what it would be to eventually sell this house, I'm realizing and gaining more information that some of the things that were done were maybe needed to go through a more legal process. In addition to this house, we acquired a second house that's on the property, so we bought 2 houses.
Like a guest house?
A guest house, yes. And that was a disaster. I mean, basically it was just the walls and needed a new kitchen. I mean, it was mostly cosmetic, but it did need some work on the roof and where there was some leakage into the walls. All that said was that required more work, and also some of the work we did in the larger house. I wish I had known that there was more of a process of how we go about, just to make sure that we had, gone through all the steps so that it was recorded and that there's not going to be any issue in the future when it comes to sell the house.
So all the kind of paperwork, the formal channels, so to speak, you're a little bit concerned about maybe making sure that was done the way it needed to be, addressing those issues. Okay. Do you think overall it went smoothly? I mean, did the vision that you had at the beginning match the final result?
Yes, I would say yes. And surprisingly, at least in my recollection, things went pretty smoothly. There was always a little hiccup there in some of the reconstruction and remodeling. But I tried not to I tried to just know, well, this is kind of Italiano. It's the way it is in Italy. Things aren't always going to be done in the time I expect or would consider in the U.S. So because I sort of manage my expectations, it felt less stressful. I had some good friends who spoke Italian, so when I needed to make some of those decisions and I was having a difficult time communicating, I had friends that were able to jump in. So with sort of my support in my community and Google Translate, we were able to get through the process really without much of a problem.
It sounded like having that support system there was
Absolutely.
really,
Oh, yeah.
really helpful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when it came time to go to, actually do the transfer of the sale and the notario. Notaio.
The transfer title.
Yeah. There was a number of people there, mostly all spoke Italian, no English. We did have representation by my friend who agreed to be our official translator. And then because we also had a broker who spoke English who had helped us in the financial piece of the buying the house. They were the only two there to really be our advocate. And there was a moment in that meeting where there were some things that the seller had to confront, which was they were concerned he didn't have things documented properly. So, but once they looked a little bit closer, they found, oh yes, he was okay. And that's actually what alerted me to in the future. I need to make sure, all of the different changes have been well documented appropriately.
So that there's an unbroken chain of title, there are no concerns about ownership being properly transferred from one owner to the next. Yeah, and that, of course, is the notario's job, but you might not have that moment when everyone's sitting around the table talking about this until you're actually on the day of closing at the notario's office for the rogito, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was. We were a little bit we knew something was going on when people were standing up and making hand gestures.
Oh my goodness.
But, and then afterwards in conversation with our translator and our broker, they were like, yeah, there was a moment it was like, is this even going to happen? So in some ways, I avoided all that stress by just not knowing what was going on.
Have another spritz. Were you able to stay within your budget? Did that part of thing? I mean, did you have? I assume you probably said, okay, this is what I'm going to allot to this, because you mentioned earlier finding a property that was within the price range that you wanted and so on. What about the cost containment? Was that difficult? Was that an issue?
I would say we stayed pretty close to our budget. I mean, I think there were definitely in some of the remodeling, things that went over. I think with the kitchen, maybe we spent a bit more. But again, we created a whole new kitchen. And, no, I felt like, the price was so good. I was not anticipating buying two houses, but because the second house was being offered for not that much more money than what the original offer was, that we felt like it could be advantageous to have, the guest house. And so no, I felt like for the amount of property that we have and the second guest house, we did pretty well, in what we but again, the owner was motivated to sell, and so it was not too difficult to negotiate. And I do have to say, the owner had a realtor who we rarely had any kind of dealings with. I mean, they were supposed to show up the day we came to look at the house. They never showed up. This is an Italian realtor.
So you came to the property and the real estate agent didn't show up?
That's right.
So the owner took you around?
The owner took us around.
Wow. And did you have an agent working with you as a buyer's agent, or you contacted the listing agent directly?
It was the listing agent directly, yeah.
And I'm just curious, the listing agent, did this person give you any reason for not being there that day?
Well, I don't really know. My husband was the one doing most of that kind of communication, and it happened on 2 different occasions. And we really just kind of took it into our own hands with the owner. You know, the owner did speak some English, and so we were able to kind of work around the real estate agent. I mean, obviously they were in the loop, but it was, yeah.
It just seems kind of shocking that the real estate agent wouldn't be here to show you, to give
I
you
think
the tour.
eventually they did, but we had already seen it like twice, and we already knew. So they were not here in the initial, you know, selling, you know. And I have to say the house was not very presentable in terms of it being, they accumulated a lot of things, and you know, it was off-putting, but there were essential structural things that were notable that I was like, yes, this house for the price. I think that's partly why the price was lower, was that it, they were motivated to sell, and they wanted to do it quickly and didn't really have the time to kind of get it into a more presentable, sellable condition.
Wow. So there wasn't, it sounds, I'm going to assume then there wasn't a lot of negotiating back and forth. It was, they were motivated, you made a good offer, and you saw the potential.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Did you pick out all the fixtures for the kitchen, the bathrooms, and so on yourself, or was somebody else going out and looking online for you and saying, okay, you could buy this bathtub, for example, and it costs this much? Or did you go perhaps yourself to furniture, not a furniture store, but I don't know, like a Home Depot type of place, home improvements?
Leroy Merlin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those kinds of, so how did that go?
You know, that's a really good question, because no, it's because that's a piece that I think is really intimidating and really hard to negotiate when you're doing it on your own and you don't have a good command of the language. So my worker, his name was Toto, his, I guess, you know, family name, or not family name, but
His nickname?
Nickname, that's what I'm trying to say, nickname. And the woman who was the one who kind of initially introduced us, and she spoke good English, so she was sort of our liaison between him and me. And so, you know, they would say, it's time, you need to pick out, you know, things for the bathroom. And so he would, you know, say, it's time that we do this, and he'd give me a couple of options of where we go. They would actually bring samples of flooring. I'd kind of give them an idea, or samples of the tile. And then because of their knowledge, they sort of brought in ideas. I wasn't highly picky about it. I just knew I didn't want the pink bathroom that was
My goodness, I can't imagine why.
And so, so they really helped facilitate kind of where to go. You know, they worked with my budget, and so it would be Andiamo, Leroy Merlin.
Okay, got your marching orders.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
In hindsight, other than what you talked about earlier as far as some of the formalities, are there things that perhaps you'd wish you'd known at the outset before you began your journey in renovation? If you had to do it over, things that if you'd known them now maybe might have made the process smoother, anything like that?
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing is just really knowing how much you're biting off, you know, in terms of, I mean, there's a lot of beautiful properties and having land and all of those things. The ongoing maintenance and caring, and you know, is something to consider. You know, because once the house was ours and the remodeling was done, then we're sort of left to our own devices in terms of finding people who can do some of the maintenance on the fruit trees and the garden and the yard, and that when the roof needs some repair.
So it sounds like knowing what kind of commitment you're making at the time
Exactly.
that you undertake, before you undertake, making
Yeah.
sure that that's something that you're prepared for.
Yes, right. I mean, that's true of any, I mean, that's wherever you are, but in the Italian world, it's a bit more of a challenge. I mean, it's quite a bit more challenging. From the standpoint, obviously, the language, the custom. We just went through 2 weeks of pretty much everything shut down because of holidays, Easter and then May Day. And anyway, so, those are things to take into consideration. For instance, when we were having the remodeling done, August was coming up and we weren't going to have it completed, and that's the month everybody wants to take off, and we had Sicilians working for us.
So they're already thinking, their mind is already back in Sicily.
Exactly. So those are, I think, big things to be aware of. I think it's important to embrace it. It's their culture. It is what it is, and you just have to adjust your expectations around that.
Because Italy is not going to mold itself to you.
Exactly, exactly. And fortunately, I felt I took it in stride, and I had, I really wanted to embrace the experience of it. It was not just the finished product, it was the journey of doing it. So.
And would that be your advice to other people who are thinking about possibly buying a property and doing this? Because we've all seen the movies. People have these romantic ideas and everything turns out well in the end, but we know, like you said, it's a journey, and every journey is going to have some dips, some ups and downs, and some curves. And so, if you could advise other people.
Absolutely. I think first of all, we probably did some things that we were naive about, and I wish I had been more, paid more attention, and probably talked to people more. At the time, we didn't really have sort of a Manuela in our life who could.
Well, but you did have a good support network, right? So
we did.
That was great.
But really knowing what you're getting into, and then being prepared that it's not going to go smoothly, and but it's part of the experience, and for us, it's been well worth it. We absolutely love being in our house, and I mean the journey still continues. We're still, continuing to live life here, but knowing we have another stage in our life to work through. I'm always trying to learn Italian. I love the Italian culture, the people, but it's important to be aware of there's people out there that will try to take your money, and so I think that's one of my concerns as I move forward. I really want to be wise about and discretionary about how I proceed with future projects.
And is that part of what you learned in this process, understanding how to recognize when perhaps someone isn't being forthright, or they're just trying to take advantage of you, pull the wool over your eyes, or do whatever, instead of someone that you could really be confident was going to give you the fair deal?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, and having people who know that you can trust, that speak the language. There's so much lost in translation. I mean, even if I think I understand certain aspects of the conversation, there's still so much miscommunication. They think I said I was going to be here, and I said no, I was going to be there. So there's a lot of, it's easy for the language to really create problems. And so finding people who have good command of the language, as well as knowledge of the Italian system.
So you have clear communication and there's no misunderstanding, or at least it minimizes
Yes.
misunderstandings.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think you have a very beautiful home.
Well, thank you.
And I'm glad that it turned out
Yeah.
more than satisfactorily, because it's a bold adventure.
It is, yes, and I can't even believe we actually did it. It's still sort of unreal process, but we did it. We were both working full time and have 2 golden retrievers that we care for, and and we're very happy. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing this with us today.
Yes.
Well, that concludes our interview with Laura. I hope that you found it helpful. If you're interested in buying property in Italy and would like representation, please contact me through my website, www.italyhomebuyer.com. And from Vicenza, Italy, until next time, arrivederci.